Kevin, no talks on the agenda for today, tomorrow. Walk me through it.
No talks. And in fact, just as I was talking yesterday with some sources on just how far apart Democrats and Republicans are on this impasse, they're about $2.5 trillion apart. Even if a lowball estimate is $2 trillion, that's still the size of Apple. I mean, they are, as one source put it, they are a world apart in terms of ideologically, in terms of the price tag, in terms of even looming battles that lie ahead for big pharmaceutical companies once a vaccine is ultimately in development. Look no further than the presumptive Democratic presidential nominee Joe Biden's vice presidential pick, Senator Kamala Harris, a Democrat from California. She has argued, along with the other House Democrats, including Speaker of the House Pelosi, that families that earn less than $140,000 a year annually ought to be given $2,000 per month until the pandemic ends. So just right there, shortly before a U.S. presidential election, shortly before contentious Senate elections, all of this is the background to an increasingly divisive debate. And quite honestly, while Wall Street continues to expect there to be more stimulus, that is what I still hear from my sources on both sides of the aisle.
Kevin,
that more stimulus is likely going to come.
I hear it on Wall Street as well, that we'll get a deal. It'll be $1.5 trillion. It's going to happen. It's going to happen. And here we are in the middle of August hearing the same thing. It's going to happen. I imagine when you woke up this morning, it wasn't about stimulus talks, though. It's all about the former VP making his VP pick. What's the reaction in the nation's capital?
Well, three quick points that I would make. First and foremost, she represents a bridge of sorts between the progressive wing and the centrist wing of the Democratic Party on a host of different issues pertaining to Medicare for all, as well as a Green New Deal and re-entry into the Iran nuclear disarmament deal. All of that is a sharp contrast to Republicans and President Trump's re-election efforts. Secondly, as it relates to China, she's much more in the common ground middle, so to speak, or consensus rather, not middle, consensus between the left and the right. She's introduced legislation, bipartisan, that would allow for the U.S. to go to pursue individuals in China who sue or who steal, rather, intellectual property from the United States. And lastly, she is a historic pick. She would be a glass ceiling shattering vice president. And what she represents is a sharp contrast in every which way from the current occupant, Vice President Mike Pence. So that debate is going to be fascinating when they debate each other.
I have to say, the VP debates just got a little bit more interesting, didn't they, Kevin? You mentioned China. Let's just get there very quickly. There will be talks at some point this week. I'm not sure on the date, the time, but it's going to happen into the weekend between China and the United States on progress of the Phase 1 deal. This government has kept this track completely separate from everything else. The trade channel insulated. The Chinese, as we understand, are looking to bring WeChat and TikTok into the conversation. Kevin, how does that change the calculus, the conversation this week?
It doesn't. I mean, look, there's a consensus on China in terms of U.S. and China policies. Look at how India, I think that's a pretty good preview, I'm told, in terms of the steps that the United States could take as it relates to China. On the issue of Huawei, I think that they're, based upon my reporting, and I talk to sources who tell me that you could see a further extension and ramp up domestically of the U.S. trying to separate more domestic companies from Huawei. And then on the issue of Tencent, I mean, you talk about WeChat, you talk about some of these games, but Tencent really is the wiggle room, so to speak, that the administration has left open. It was by design that there's some market confusion as to whether or not it's just WeChat or business doing with Tencent as a whole, and so that likely is a geopolitical bargaining chip that could come up in the talks that the Chinese want to have with the United States over the next couple of days.